So today I'm extremely excited to have Sean Stephen dialing in from the US. I believe you're in Arizona. Is that right, Sean?
Yes, sir.
So we've got a time difference thing going on from America to UK, but lots of exciting common interest to chat and discover together today. As always with the interviews, Sean, it's really great if you can just sort of share a bit of background to who you are and what you do. I'm sure a lot of our viewers have heard of your work already, but be cool just to kind of sum up growing up, a bit about your disability, and yeah, whatever you care to share, really.
Sure. So when I was born, the doctors they told my parents that I would be dead within the first 24 hours of my life. I'm sure a lot of people with disabilities have been saying that about their condition. And so my parents really banded together and did a wonderful job of raising me. And, my inside joke is that 38 years later, all those doctors are dead and I'm still here presenting to you. And
Winning.
that goes over really well everywhere but at hospitals. Uh, so growing up, definitely a challenge. I'm only about 3 feet tall. I use a wheelchair for physical mobility. My bones were extremely fragile because I was born with a condition called osteogenesis imperfecta, also known as brittle bones disorder. And something as simple as sneezing would break a collarbone.
Wow.
Putting on a pair of pants too quickly could break a femur leg bone. And, by the time I was 18, I had fractured over 200 times.
Wow.
So lots and lots and lots of excruciating pain growing up. Had multiple surgeries on my body. Experienced a few accidents in my life that almost took me out. A lot of challenges with the fact that growing up, being the way I look, being stared at my whole life. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But what really turned the corner for me, and it happened around my senior year of high school, is I fell in love with personal growth and development. Studying people like Tony Robbins and Les Brown and Wayne Dyer. And studying these individuals, I realized that I had an ability to decide how I wanted to interpret my life. Did I want to look at all the things that weren't fair, or did I want to look at everything that I had access to? Did I want to become bitter, or do I want to use this to make me better? And it's my choice. And so there's a painting in my home here that's above our front door, and it says, "The key to success is to play the hand that you were dealt like it's the hand that you wanted."
Mhm.
And it's so true because growing up, I had a lot of times where I felt like it wasn't fair to have my disability. I didn't consciously ask for it in this lifetime. And why did I have to go through this and other people didn't? I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But what I what I drew the conclusion of is that what do I really want out of my life? Like, what are all the things that I want? Well, I wanted a romantic love. I wanted to be able to travel, and I wanted my own source of income. I wanted a lot of good friends. I wanted to taste different foods from around the world. I wanted to impact people and have a good time. Could I do all those things with my disability? Yeah, I just have to do them a little differently. So at some age, I finally realized that my disability really doesn't prevent me from having a great quality of life. It just prevents me from having a normal life. So I stopped obsessing about the unfairness of it and just got to work on what could I do and how much fun could I have with it. And I spent, God, over 10 years of my life understanding the female species and what attracts them to men um, beyond physical appearance. And finally had a lot of dates and girlfriends until finally I got married to the woman that I always wanted and built a wonderful marriage with her. I worked and worked and worked on building a business that could make me really good money and allow me to travel the world and impact people, and I've developed that. I'm very blessed. I went from living 7 years ago in my childhood bedroom with my parents taking care of me to where I am now, where I have 2 homes, I'm married, and I bought my favorite dream car, and I have friends around the world. And, I don't mean to brag, but I'm proud of the fact that I did it by focusing my attention on helping others. And when you help others, it automatically comes back to you.
That's extremely inspirational. I'm sure the viewers at Disability Horizons are going to really enjoy hearing that. And as you say, there'll be certain commonalities about the struggles and the barriers and the doubts, and hopefully a lot of ideas being generated that in the basic sense, everything is possible and we can do what we set our mind to. But there's a few sort of areas to dig in a bit deeper there. I suppose the one thought is around the activism. I don't know how it is in America, but over in the UK, there's this big thing with activism around we're disabled by the barriers of society, and it's called the social model of disability. And that sort of liberated the movement back in the sort of 70s and 80s. I think it's sort of sprung out of California, actually. And I think that's been really empowering, that people don't feel that they are the problem and that the medical differences need to be cured. Everyone would agree with that. And that there are these societal barriers. So by having wheelchair access or hearing loops or braille, that they bring down the barriers and make it a more inclusive society. But I wonder and I worry sometimes more recently that people then confuse the social model with the fact that as individuals, we still have to understand ourselves and our dreams and then set about going after them. I just wondered if you had any sort of thoughts from your experience and other disabled people you know about that balance between societal activism and personal growth.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that a lot of people with disabilities don't like me. And that used to upset me. And then I kind of took a hard look at why do they not like me. And for me, I don't think very much about having a disability. I don't even talk about it much. I wouldn't consider myself a disability rights activist. I wouldn't, I was a poli-sci major and worked for the president and worked on Capitol Hill. So I have a political background, but I never really considered myself much of a disability rights activist. And so I put a lot of my time and attention in developing my own internal reality, my own inner world, and developing my self-esteem, my confidence. And I always tell people, like, if you look at my life as a pie chart, only about the 2% sliver do I give to my disability. I give 98% to other things. And because of that, I react different to things. I'm not militant when I see that a building is not accessible. I, of course, want to make it accessible and see what we can do to help others get into it. But there's not this demanding feeling within me that I need to be treated in some kind of societal group. I consider myself an individual first. And I put a lot of attention into my own personal growth. And I believe that's what's allowed me to generate the life that I've had. It's very easy to, and I see this a lot, where people with disabilities, they constantly are talking about their disability. They're constantly communicating with other people with disabilities. They're constantly talking about the differences between them and the others. And it can start to cause a chasm between you and all those that you feel can't understand you. And to me, that creates a divide. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm answering your question properly, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, no, that does answer it. And I think in a way there's an irony that the sort of certain disabled activists? Because I think, yeah, you just admitted that you would in some way look to make a building be a bit more accessible if there was a benefit to you and others, and you have a conversation. So it's sort of partly your style is not that militant activist, but you would
Yeah,
still.
and I would go a different direction. So instead of, the way I look at it, instead of saying, how can I get a disabilities group together and demand that that building become accessible, I would figure out who's in charge of the property management. How
Yeah,
can I befriend them, bring their family value, and get them to like me as a human, and then have them go on a tour with me and show them that I can't get access to their own building,
yeah,
so that then it becomes their idea to fix it. I mean, that's kind of what I did when I was in college. I went to a private university, and none of the buildings were accessible. They didn't have any of the buttons that were automating the doors. And I befriended the president of the university, and I took him on a tour one day, and I said, "Hey, can you humor me for a moment?" And he said, "Sure." I said, "Can you get on your knees and put your hands behind your back and try to open that door?" And
awesome.
within a period of about, I think, 12 days, uh, multiple doors were made accessible, and there were multiple changes to the campus where I went to. And yet, when I originally went to the office with disabilities, the person in charge, and said, "Hey, why is this not okay?" They had a
Mm,
bunch of reasons why. They said, "Oh, it's because we don't have the funding. This is a private university. We don't have to make this accessible." And so going the traditional route didn't work for me. And so that's why I befriended the person at the top. And my mentality has always been, you go further in life uh, with honey instead of vinegar. You go further in life by befriending people, bringing them value, being supportive, and then having them say, "How can I help you down the road?" And
yeah.
some would call that manipulative. Others would call it, good networking. It really depends on where is your set of values around getting what you need.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we probably both agreed in a way there's an activism, but it's just in a very innovative, clever, human, compassionate, empathetic way, as opposed to the more militant style. And I was just going to say before that the irony of some of the fight for inclusion is that it actually, as you say, separates groups from each other, and you
Yeah,
get anything but inclusion. So yeah, no, I think that definitely rings true for my growing up and how I've tried to approach the world as well. So yeah,
it's like a war for peace. You can't you can't have a war for peace.
yeah,
You have to have peace for peace. Only thing that drives out darkness is light, not more darkness.
yeah,
And I've also noticed that when somebody's already uncomfortable interacting with a group in society, be it disability, gay, race, religion, whatever it may be, whatever makes them uncomfortable, it's because they don't understand it.
yeah.
Now, I've never met somebody who is homophobic whose best friend was gay. I never met somebody who hated to deal with people with disabilities whose father was in a wheelchair. You know what I mean? Like, you
Hmm.
don't see that. When there's a personal relationship involved, barriers go away.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I mean, moving it away from the disability activism or yeah, general disability world, be great to hear a bit more about the political background that you mentioned. I think was it Bill Clinton that you worked
Hmm.
with for a while. So how
Yep.
how did that come about? That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So I was really into politics when I was in high school. I was a canvassed as an, going around knocking on doors, letting people know to vote. I was very, very patriotic. I was very much into democracy. Then I went on to college and became a political science major. And then I applied to work for my congressman on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And then the next year, I applied to work at the White House, working for President Bill Clinton. And I had met him through another organization when I was in high school. So then that helped me get a foot in the door. And then I was hired to work for the summer for President Clinton. and spent 3 months in the White House working for the president, which was a tremendous honor. I was there during one of the most politically charged scenes and times when he was getting impeached for the Monica
wow.
stuff. So I saw a lot, I heard a lot, and I kept my journal from that time period in a lockbox for the future someday. And it was a fascinating time. I learned so much from President Clinton and his advisors, and from my colleagues there. But by the end of that, I made one more attempt at government. I applied to work in the justice system for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I wanted to do computer crime and like cyber issues, and didn't get.
Do you mean to stop the crime, not to do cybercrime, but to help stop it?
Exactly. Stop it. And didn't get selected by the Justice Department, and so then I decided to go another route with my career, which was more public speaking.
Yeah, and that was perfect segue into my next question. Was you mentioned that you've been able to build up a business that you're earning good money, and it enables you to live all the dreams that you're with your wife, and you can travel the world. So what's the business involved? You just mentioned public speaking. Has that always been what the business is around, or
pretty much? I started my first paid speaking engagement when I was in the early 90s, like 1993, and I've been speaking ever since. And it's started off at a $75 speech, and I thought I was the richest man alive. And now we can get upwards to 25 to 30,000 US for one speech, and I'm very, very blessed that we built it to that level. And we get flown to Switzerland and Kenya, Africa, and all throughout Asia, and of course all over the US. And it's amazing. I get to present to so many incredible people who are doing wonderful things with their lives, and I get to share the stage. I shared the stage with the Dalai Lama, with U.S. presidents. It's very much been a dream come true, and sometimes I pinch myself and I think, who else gets to come to work and get a standing ovation when they go home? It's a blessed, and again, it comes back to my disability is only 2% of who I am, but it gives me an advantage with my speaking career, because there's 10 speakers speaking at a conference and only one in a wheelchair. It's very easy to remember the one in the wheelchair.
Memorable.
Yeah, and I believe that, in my opinion, because I now teach people how to become speakers, that if you have a disability, there is no more profitable industry to enter into than being a professional speaker, because there your disability is actually an advantage, not a disadvantage.
Interesting.
And you have incredible stories that make people want to listen, because people love contrast. You got to remember, the majority of people that are coming to conferences or company speeches, they're there, they have a lot of things available to them that they're taking for granted. They have entitlement issues. And when you roll out on stage and you talk about your life, not from oh, poor me, but hey, look at what I've done. Here are the strategies that I used. If they work for me, they definitely can work for you. That opens people's eyes, and then it hits them square between the eyes. It hits them in the heart. And so there, your disability, if you come out with canes, if you come out in a wheelchair, you come out with a limp or a lisp or whatever your challenges are physically, and you are happy and you tell them about how you have succeeded, it gives you a huge amount of credentials and credibility for people to want to listen to you. And so this is why I teach people with disabilities, don't see your disability as some kind of inhibitor to making money. Just figure out what is it about your disability that actually gives you an advantage on this planet. And I got to say, I've been doing this now for well over 23 years, and not a day goes by that I never regret the career I built. I'm proud of the fact that we've reached so many people, and we've made videos online that have been viewed by hundreds of millions of people. And here I am, 3 feet tall in a wheelchair, and I couldn't get a regular 9-to-5 job because I was discriminated against when I was young, and I tried to work as a receptionist at a chiropractor's office. I tried to be a salesman at an electronics store. I tried to be a phone operator at a limo service company, and I got rejected by all of them. And I'm so grateful, because those would have made me minimum wage, and I would have lived a normal, challenged life financially. And so I'm grateful I was discriminated against, because it pushed me. Now, that doesn't mean everybody should be able to discriminate against people with disabilities, but there's different ways to go about your discrimination, and mine was to start my own company.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. And picking up on the point you made about stories, one of the videos I've seen of you was speaking at Mind Valley's A-Fest, which is obviously via Vision, is how we came to do the interview today. So a big shout out to Vision, and thanks for that as well. But you were talking about how connectivity is so important in life. And there was a guy that I think had driven you, but maybe was a taxi driver or something when you were on a holiday. And it turned out that you're just being friendly and caring about him. He was going to commit suicide, was that right? And just that night, and just that connection of being, talking to you and your spirit and your happiness really changed his mind, that there was so much more in life to live. It was really, really powerful. So I think, yeah, as you say, the stories are so rich, and people, when they see a disability, it blows away any of the worries they have about their own background and their own challenges. So
yeah, and my mentality is that your disability makes you stand out.
Yeah.
And it also makes people remember you. And in the business world, that's called good marketing.
Cool. Well, before we wrap up the interview, obviously we'll put the details under the video that you're going to be doing a masterclass sharing your top 5 tips sort of broadly around self-esteem and confidence, because I think we both know that if you can love yourself and feel comfortable in who you are, and that your difference and your background challenges are not a bad thing, but as we've just said, they are a unique set of skills and attributes for the world, then I really urge people to come and view Sean's 5 top tips on that thing. But the last kind of question I wanted to touch on was, I know that you've had a couple of books and you've had a TV program made about you in America as well. So like for you, how did they come about? What did that mean to you? And how did that sort of fit in with the business stuff as well?
Yeah, so they came about because I hustled my ass off, and I had to knock on a lot of doors and get rejected more times than I care to remember. Because literally, when I tried to get a book out there, publishers and editors would say the most ridiculous, discriminatory things like, well, the only reason why you've been successful is because of your disability. They hired you at the White House because they felt bad for you. And I'm like, okay, all right, you're not getting the big picture here. And, getting the book out there, I had to go through 3 years, 3 different literary agents, 3 different rounds of going through all the publishers and getting rejected. I got rejected well over 100 times. And each time the letters would come back, and they would break my heart just as much. But I had this persistent attitude. One of the things I'm so grateful for with my disability is that it's developed a really spiritually thick skin. And, I'm not good at a lot of things. I screw up. I make a lot of mistakes. But the one thing I never question is that I get back up. That you can knock me down 100 times. I'm like that toy that when you knock it over, it comes back up.
Weeble wobbler.
Exactly. It's the one thing about me that I'm very proud of, and that is, with everything I've gone through, I always get back up. And I think because I've been through so much pain that I made promises to my younger self that I didn't go through those things in vain. That I didn't go through this life to be physically, emotionally tortured and then just die. That I decided that if I'm going to go through all this pain and challenges, that I was not going to quit on my dreams. And the only thing that was going to stop me would be death itself. And I can't control that. So I just kept getting up, whether it was the TV show. It took years of flying back and forth between New York and LA, trying to convince networks and executives and production companies and agents that I had something. And finally, I got in front of the right people at the right time, and they were able to see the big picture and they went with it. But, you know, what's interesting is I busted my butt to get that TV show, and it sounds very flashy and impressive. But what's interesting is only about 80,000 people saw my TV show on the television live. What's amazing is that took years to get and a lot of heartache. And they spent $500,000 to make the show to one episode. And, you know, fast forward a few years, I took a stack of Post-it notes and I wrote loving messages and held them up for the camera. It took me 2 minutes to film it. And that video has been seen hundreds of millions of times.
The power of social media, hey?
Yeah. So, you know, even though the book and the television show are personal accomplishments and they sound impressive, putting my own message and heart into something to put out into the world made a much bigger splash and helped a lot more people and got me a lot more visibility.
And what would you say to a closing statement, really? What is that message that you think you're packaging up and sending out to the world?
That you need to love yourself, that you need to have impeccable self-care, that if you're not taking care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, it's very hard to enjoy life.
Boom. That is fantastic. Perfect way to end the interview. Thank you so much, Sean, for your time today. We really enjoyed catching up, and I'm sure the viewers have taken a lot away with it. So we'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Thank you.